We saw her on camera. The last image of her is on camera with a bag of food, and her eyes look so sad.
I kept asking myself, why her? Why couldn't it have been me instead of her?
We've seen a lot of African American girls that have gone missing, and very little visibility is brought to their case. For 2 weeks, we said she did not run away. And for 2 weeks, they kept saying she ran away. On January 12th, 2018, my 16-year-old niece, Jolie Musa, went missing. She came home with her sister and then was getting some random text messages from somebody, we don't know who. And at that moment in time, she was like, I'll be right back. I gotta go, I'll be right back. Unfortunately for us, she never came back. When we're telling the police that there's definitely something wrong, she would never be gone like this and completely stop communication. What we then heard was, right now it looks like she left of her own free will. She's a runaway. With the use of that word, there was no further action being done on her case. For 2 weeks, we said she did not run away. And for 2 weeks, they kept saying she ran away. She had been discarded in the woods like yesterday's trash. If they had not said she was a runaway, if law enforcement had started looking for her more urgently at the time we reported her as missing, could they have found her alive?
Jolie was murdered by an ex-boyfriend who had previously assaulted her. Nabiyu Ibrahim strangled Jolie and hid her body in a park. In a statement, the Fairfax County Police Department said Jolie was initially reported missing on January 13th, and our officers immediately began investigating. Ibrahim was promptly identified as a person of interest in her disappearance. Every piece of technology and resource available to our department was deployed to solve this case.
Why would the police look at a young black girl and think she's more likely to be a runaway than a young white girl?
There's just a certain level of prejudice, that still kind of hangs in our culture in the United States.
Across America, the statistics on missing children show a shocking racial disparity. Only 14% of children in the US are black, but 37% of missing people under 18 are African American. Of all the kids that go missing, over 90% are runaways, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Most of these issues with young people who run away, they're usually running from a condition or running to a condition, meaning someone's luring them out.
Relisha.
This is 8-year-old Relisha Rudd.
That's good. I can hear him laughing.
She was interviewed by a homeless charity in February 2014.
Shelter give us some place to stay.
She's talking about the shelter where she lived in Washington, D.C.
Say it louder. The shelter give us some place to stay.
4 weeks later, she went missing.
You on the screen.
This is Relisha and the shelter's caretaker, Khalil Tatum, walking into a motel room. Relisha hasn't been seen since.
You have a flyer, sir? Yes, ma'am. Okay. So please keep an eye out for Relisha. Okay. Thank you.
I kept asking myself, why her? Why couldn't it have been somebody else? Why couldn't it be me instead of her?
Relisha didn't like staying in the shelter, did she?
Relisha called it the trap house.
What did she mean by that?
When they say the trap house, because either drugs is being sold around or near.
It was horrible. Rats, stink, lice, filth, nasty. It was just so much going on in terms of the quality of care and resources, food. The food there was horrible. I heard Relisha Rudd didn't want to eat there sometimes. She would want to go with somebody else just to really get something good to eat.
Over at DC General, you've seen a lot of things that a child should not see. They was exposed to a lot of things.
Khalil Tatum killed himself a month after this footage was shot, and the police still don't know what happened to Relisha. Her family cling to the hope that someone will come forward with information about their little girl. And her community worries about the many vulnerable children like Relisha.
Sadly, a number of children that are part of the lower economic standings in our community, they aren't taken as seriously. What we're noticing is there are a number of homeless children and children in foster care that are being victims of sex trafficking. And sex trafficking of our children is taking place around the country, like Atlanta, Chicago, Baltimore.
And overwhelmingly African American victims.
Absolutely, there's a disproportionate number of African American girls and boys who are victims of sex trafficking.
So I was 14 and I had this boyfriend who was 28 years old. My parents on my 14th birthday wouldn't let me stay out past 9 p.m. And so I called him and he said, pick you up in 15 minutes, don't take anything. So I think that's the number one thing when we call kids missing. That would appear to be me running away. At 14, no child can consent to getting in the car with an adult, period. So it's actually called kidnapping. When I was 15, they did a raid. And when they did a raid, I told the police I was 15. I said my real age. And I actually said I had a pimp. And so I was arrested and put in juvenile detention for a year. But there are other survivors that speak out who are Caucasian. And one of the survivors, she's a good friend of mine. She got found in Tennessee. She's originally from Virginia. When she got found in Tennessee at 15, the police drove her home to Virginia, and I got arrested and charged for prostitution.
On the story that has shocked people all across this country.
Thousands of volunteers have been looking for her for weeks.
We're announcing that we have found a body that the coroner has identified.
I don't think the media cares more about the white child. I think media definitely airs what they think people are more interested in. So it's a byproduct of what goes on in the world. So what the world has shown pretty consistently throughout the years is that Black children are lesser valued. They're not cared about as much.
Although Black children are overrepresented in US statistics on missing children, they are underrepresented in the news headlines. A study in 2015 found that 35% of kids that disappeared were Black, but only 7% of media stories on missing children involved African American cases.
Media used to call me and ask me for a white survivor that was 13 years old, and I'm not making that up. People would say this to me like, no, I get the numbers on the African American girls, Tina, but tell me, how many Caucasian girls do you get? Some of the looser statistics do say 73% of trafficking survivors in the U.S. are people of color.
You mind taking a flyer? If a white person went missing, and you see all this rigmarole, all this media, all this hype, and then you look next door and it's a Black person missing under the same conditions, and they didn't get that.
Henderson Long comes out night after night to look for missing people in Washington, D.C.'s poorest and majority African American communities.
You know, there's somebody's child, right?
He works for free, having experienced his own loss. His aunt Aileen went missing over 2 decades ago and never came home.
No, a teenager. I got my first crash course to be out talking to dope dealers, prostitutes, drug addicts, you name it, residents, police officers. I got a chance to see how it feels to be searching, trying to find your loved one. These folks, they don't have any money. They don't have somebody to come and advise them on their case, to be a liaison between them and the police department.
We have families that literally will call us before calling the police and filing a report. They're distrustful of the police because of previous experiences or what they've seen on the news or just personally seen. It's not all police departments. It's not every police person. It's not. There are many kids for whom the police report is done impeccably, but there is definitely inherent bias.
You see a higher volume of lack of jobs.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
You see that education is far inferior to all other areas. You see a lot of domestic violence. You see a higher number of missing persons missing from these areas.
There needs to be more sensitivity training, but it takes all of us, law enforcement, the community, and our media to bring awareness to and help find our missing.
Racism is everywhere. I think it's in every part of our society. I think no one is exempt. Not the mayor, not the president. It's not something to deny. We got to fight it. That's what I would say to anybody.